Hi, my name is Anna, and every week I summarize a book for you. And if you are enjoying these videos, please subscribe to my channel, like and comment on these videos. Engagement is what helps promote my work here on this platform, and I really do appreciate it. Today I will be discussing Your 4-Year-Old by Louise Bates Ames. This book is part of a whole series where there is one book per age and was developed as part of the Gesell Institute of Human Development, where they studied thousands of children between birth to 16-year-old over 100 years. Their observations led them to understand that child behavior does develop in a highly patterned way. Just like babies had what we call regressions, young children also continue to have clear and predictable stages of equilibrium and disequilibrium, which basically means periods of regulation and periods of dysregulation, which explains why parenting can be felt like such a roller coaster sometimes. And these ages should only be used as a guide, as they still acknowledge that each child is unique and may be going through their own timeline. This is just to highlight that periods of dysregulation are regular and normal. The authors still acknowledge that each child is unique. So the information that I will be sharing today is simply a representation of the average child of that age, a huge generalization. So please take this information with a grain of salt. Your child may be more calm or shy than other children, or on the other hand, he might be more active and wild than other children, and that's perfectly normal. Their goal when writing these books was simply to normalize periods of dysregulation in childhood, and to allow us parents to bring more understanding and empathy to the relationship we have with our child, and ultimately to really enjoy our child. First, we will discuss specific characteristics of the 4-year-old. Then we will discuss physical development, emotional development, language development, and social development. And then we will end with specific steps that we can take to really enjoy our 4-year-old. Let's start with specific characteristics of the 4-year-old. Enjoying the 4-year-old phase has a lot to do with mindset, because it is a year of high energy. And remember that if your child is more on the calmer side, they might not be that wild, but they will display more energy than before. 4 has taken a giant step forward. All of a sudden, he discovers that the adult, though still quite powerful, is not all-powerful. He now finds much power in himself. He finds that he can do bad things and the world doesn't stop. For the most part, the 4-year-old is joyous, exuberant, energetic, ridiculous and free, ready for anything. He loves adventure, loves excursions, loves excitement, loves anything new like new people, new places, new games. He tends to accept what you have to offer with great enthusiasm. This reminds me of a recent trip to the local zoo that we took with my 4-year-old and 6-year-old that couldn't have been a better reflection of their developmental age. My 4-year-old so excited about everything, squealing at every animal and wanting to see everything, and my 6-year-old moodily saying, "This is boring." 4 is highly versatile. He's many people in one. He can be quiet or noisy, calm or assertive, suggestible or independent, social, athletic, artistic, literal, cooperative, inquisitive, and humorous. He can be best described as loving to go out of bounds, being expansive and sure of himself. Sometimes he may seem boastful and bossy, but this is because it is so exciting for him to enter the fresh fields of self-expression. 4-year-olds are extremely curious. They have a very active imagination and they're very creative. Dressing up and playing pretend play are very big at this age. Now let's deep dive into physical development. The 4-year-old has a high motor drive. He has a lot of energy to burn. He loves to be speedy as if he never stops moving. And at times, his motor drive is so extreme that if he's not given lots of opportunity for physical activity, for blowing off steam, he may become quite difficult. His balance and action have improved impressively over the past few months. He loves to run, climb, jump, and he can now skip on one foot. My 4-year-old certainly did all of these things. I'd be talking to her and she'd be moving all around me, skipping and jumping at the same time, making my head spin. Whilst previously they hesitated to do anything physically difficult, they now welcome it as a challenge. They are actually less interested in fully completing something. They're more interested in beginning lots of little activities and moving on to the next thing. 4, as a rule, likes to dress himself and is proud of his increasing abilities, and he likes games like beating the clock to complete the process. When a 4-year-old feels tense, he may express that by increasing his general overactivity, by running around and speaking too fast and too loudly and being extremely wild. 4 can do many things that his previous 3-year-old self couldn't do. Building with cubes becomes increasingly skillful, and he's very good with pencils and crayon. He can now copy a cross if you show him a drawing of one, and by 4.5-year-old, he can copy a square. And if asked to draw a person, he can actually draw a recognizable person. Now let's move on to emotional development. The 4-year-old has a high emotional drive. His emotions are definitely extreme. He can go from love to hate in a heartbeat, and he will express his love or hate for different foods and different people. He's passionately in love with his mom and dislikes anything that she changes about herself, whether it's wearing new jewelry or having a haircut. He loves to laugh. He can get almost hysterical with laughter, and he really appreciates jokes. On the other hand, when upset, he can be also very extreme. He will hit, kick, and scream loudly. But overall, when he doesn't want to do what you want him to do, he will mostly express it with his colorful language. He will tell you in words rather than in action why he doesn't want to do something. I remember my kids at this age telling me, "You're not the boss of me." Now let's move on to language development. The 4-year-old loves to talk. He loves to have discussions, loves learning new words and trying them out and playing with them. He asks lots of why and how questions. He loves to learn new information. He also loves stories, especially stories with lots of action. And he has trouble telling the difference between fact and fiction. Because he loves words, he loves rhymes and silly language. And he loves exaggerations, like as tall as the sky, as big as my house. He loves to boast about being the biggest, strongest, best, and happiest, and he uses lots of bathroom words. The 4-year-old actually delights in using words that upset or trigger their parents. So expect phrases like poo-poo head. They also love to use swear words that they have heard without fully understanding the meaning behind it, just to get a rise out of people. "It isn't fair" is also another favorite phrase that a lot of 4-year-olds use. And spatial language is now well developed, like underneath, over there, and he can find his own clothes and he can easily pick up his toys and put them away. Now let's move on to social development. Friendships are very strong at 4. These kids really enjoy spending time with each other. They enjoy the company of their peers more than adults, and they really love to play with each other. Cooperation, sharing, taking turns now tend to come quite easily to most. And they like to do big projects with the group, like elaborate construction or imaginative play. There is very little isolated play at this age. They are ready for and really interested in group activity. They like to have friends, like to meet new friends, like to see themselves as a friend and be liked by others. And their emotions are also extremes in terms of friendship. They will exclude someone that they don't like by saying you can't come in, and they will also verbalize strong feelings of friendship with other children, saying I like you. Children not only like to play with their friends, but they also like to sit around with their arms around each other and whisper. And they love parties and celebrating their birthdays with their friends. They may engage in sex play, playing doctors, and they are very curious about other people's bodily functions. I also wanted to provide some guidelines from the book on how we can make sure that we really enjoy this age. The first point is to understand that their high energy, boastfulness, and swearing is completely normal. Ignoring the swearing will make the thrill of it die down. Because they love to talk, we should spend a lot of time listening to them and talking with them. And because of their love of adventure and high energy, we should spend a lot of time outdoors with them, playing with playing equipment. 4-year-olds respond better to positive instruction, so we should tell them what we want them to do rather than what we don't want them to do. And as they love exaggeration, no amount of compliment or praise is enough for them. So much so that they will actually praise themselves if they don't get enough praise. Because he often goes out of bounds, he definitely needs boundaries, and he needs adults to intervene when his behavior becomes out of control. 4-year-olds actually love rules and boundaries. They may not respect them all of the time, but they like to know that they are there. And in general, parents shouldn't label the behavior as lying when children make up stories. A 4-year-old is not lying in the same way that an older child would be lying. So we shouldn't punish them when they tell something that we know for a fact is not true. And at the same time, we shouldn't also believe all the stories that our children tell us. And that's even when they actually swear that the stories are true. Overall, the author recommends that we take the approach of what they call informed permissiveness, which is basically controlled flexibility. This is about setting up our child for success, making sure that our rules and demands about our child are reasonable, and this will look very differently from one child to another. In fact, in my experience, if a rule or a task has become a regular conflict with your child, this is your child telling you that they cannot meet that demand. To give you an example of this, my eldest, when she was 4-year-old, could definitely not dress herself. But my second child at 4-year-old took so much pride in doing it herself. So it's very different from one child to another. Before I end this video, I also wanted to touch on the fact that when your child reaches 4.5-year-old, or whenever he reaches the next phase, he will go through a predictable phase of dysregulation. He will be more persistent and demanding, less easy to distract, and his behavior may actually seem purposely obnoxious. His emotions will still be highly volatile, he will cry and laugh easily. He will be a little less wild and will be able to stick with a task a little longer. And he will have a new awareness of good and bad. He actually loves real-life stories where he can understand who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. And he may struggle to get to sleep. That's it for today. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave me a like and please leave me a comment and introduce yourself. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and keep growing!